I'm finishing my trip in India. We are now in Benares before leaving and flying back to Paris. I just wanted to thank you. Thank you, India.
That was the French President Emmanuel Macron bidding goodbye to India in a unique style after his 4 days that he spent in the country. But what is it that made the French president so emotional this time? Was it because of the reception that was accorded to him? Or is it a reflection of the deeper ties that France has with India, the new friendship, or shall we say Frenchship, that India and France now enjoy?
India and France have been friends since the times of World War I. So, when French President Emmanuel Macron chose India for his first visit after resuming office, Prime Minister Modi received him at the airport with warm hugs as a special gesture, breaking protocol again. Macron's most awaited visit was kicked off by a ceremonial welcome that followed the next morning after he landed with his wife Brigitte Macron and a few senior cabinet ministers. President Ramnath Kovind and Prime Minister Modi accorded him a grand Indian-style welcome. As this was the first time India and France held bilateral talks after the two new leaders took charge of their respective nations, much was being speculated about their chemistry and the pacts that the two will sign. With the arrival of Macron in India, the 20-year-old India-France strategic partnership launched in 1998 seems to have come of age. Both nations expressed their concerns on terrorism, an agenda which Prime Minister Modi has been taking to every single forum in the world.
Our two democracies have common challenges regarding terrorism, a lot of common risks, a lot of threats. But we have to protect this history and this taste for freedom.
The two-decade-old friendship was made even more concrete when the two nations signed 14 pacts in areas ranging from defense, security and nuclear energy. Prime Minister Modi and his French friend also co-chaired the founding conference of International Solar Alliance, promoting India and Modi's bid for clean energy.
It is actually on the strategic partnership that India and France has shown great growth. And it is a time we must recognize that in 1998, when India was treated almost like a pariah state because it had done the nuclear tests, and the entire Western nations had boycotted India at that time, put economic sanctions, it was France that actually signed a strategic partnership. And the relationship has been trouble-free in that sense, frictionless right through this. There's a very positive symbolism to the relationship. Now, the strategic part rested on about 3 or 4 major planks that were there. One, of course, was clearly defense equipment, and we've seen the Rafael deal, the purchase of submarines, and there's a whole lot of other deals on the anvil that we could buy from France. The other was the nuclear front, where France backed us fully on it, and we had agreed, the two countries had agreed that we would put up 6 of their plants in Jataipur on a cooperative basis between the Nuclear Power Corporation and their counterpart in France. That, of course, has ran into delays because of various issues of liability and cost overruns that were there, and still is being worked out. The other plank is counterterrorism. Now, France also has been a country under attack. India has, of course, been a country under attack, and sharing the resources, jointly fighting terror has been one of the major planks that France and India have combined. The fourth area, which has really taken off in this trip, is the fact that we signed a logistic agreement arrangement which allows India and France to use their respective bases in the Indian Ocean. That, I think, is the biggest outcome in terms of this meeting, in terms of strategic cooperation between the two countries.
While Macron was busy in New Delhi, India's oldest city was being decked up to welcome him. City of Shiva and now the city of India's Prime Minister. Varanasi was decorated to receive Modi's special guest. From Modi and Macron's posters on the banks of Ganges to their cutouts on important landmarks, the city was immersed in French flavour. UP's Chief Minister Adityanath Yogi himself supervised all the ghats to ensure the city's beauty and the guest security is devoid of any loopholes. With showers of flower petals, a recital of Shehnai and chants of mantras, Macron's welcome was as grand as it could get. Sailed from the famous Assi Ghat to the Dashashwamedha Ghat, from where Modi began his political journey in Varanasi. Somewhere amid the decorated ghats, a sewer pipe found itself camouflaged with a huge poster of Macron and Modi. The ghats were crowded with people holding Indian and French flags. Artists enacting scenes from Ramayana. The cultural heritage of Varanasi took over the last day of Macron's India visit, which made him take to Twitter to leave an emotional message for the host nation.
I just wanted to thank you. Thank you, Benares, for your welcome. Thank you for your presence during this whole day with Prime Minister Modi. I just wanted to tell you how emotional it was to see this crowd all over the streets, welcoming us with the French and the Indian flags. That's an honor for me to be with you, and it was a real pleasure for me to be in Benares today. Thank you.
Emmanuel met Brigitte 24 years ago when he was 15 and she was his drama teacher. Today, they are the brand new first couple of France, a country where their age difference is a matter of indifference. When he was a student and she was his teacher, they had long discussions together. She would read his writings aloud to the class. Today, when he is president and she is the first lady, she continues to play the important role of his private advisor.
Cette ferveur que vous portez, je sais ce que je vous dois, et je sais ce soir ce que je dois à mes compagnons de route, à mes amis, à ma famille et à mes proches.
Born to a family of doctors, Emmanuel Macron was the only child who defied family tradition and followed a career first in investment banking and then in politics. Macron was unknown to the general public when his mentor François Hollande was elected 5 years ago. The former banker and advisor to Hollande went on to do a 2-year stint as economy minister. During his ministership, he pushed through reforms like deregulating Sunday working and introducing more competition to the legal profession.
Et là, ce qui est frappant, c'est qu'il part avec, a priori, assez peu de chance de son côté. Il se lance dans l'aventure. Certains trouvent qu'il y a un parallèle entre sa manière de faire et celle qu'avait un jeune Napoléon Bonaparte, comme ça, au sabre clair.
The age difference between Macron and Brigitte is exactly the same as Donald Trump and Melania, only the other way round. Since Macron had become France's economy minister in 2014, he and Brigitte have starred on the front page of many a celebrity magazine. While he got commented for his youthful looks and political acumen, she was being celebrated for her style quotient.
But it was President Macron, or that time candidate Macron, who inspired the entire French people, came virtually from behind and swept the polls and promised a government that was neither left nor right, more center, more attacking the key problems that France faced, whether it was taxation, high taxes, he said he would reduce it, whether it was proper education, he said he would ensure that would happen, whether it was breaking all the norms in terms of the the way everything was stuck in terms of bureaucracy, he said he would clean that act up. So on, and in terms of relations with Europe, he said he would strengthen it considerably. He was going to be a global player. He was not necessarily going to be confined. He understood France's place in the world better than anybody else did.
Europe is changing now. With Brexit, the contribution of England is set to decline in the European Union, whereas another strong member, Germany, is busy sorting out political difficulties at home. Macron has the advantage of emerging as a face of Europe for the world. Since assuming office, his tough talk on the European refugee crisis and inclusive foreign policy have become talk of the town. Macron's emphasis on increasing French influence on the world and integrating deadlocked European Union has left many in believing that he has a chance of becoming a strong global leader.
If you look at his foreign policy, he's emerging as a leader of Europe, without doubt. He is very clear that he will back Europe, that he will ensure that it retains its greatness and will not split. And that is given the fact that Germany is now run by a weak coalition government, and Merkel is not as powerful as she was at one point. He emerges as one of the key leaders. So he's positioning himself as a leader with great responsibility.
Macron's India visit comes at a time when the opposition has been accusing the Modi government of something fishy when it comes to the 58,000 crore rupee Rafael deal. Now, France is one of the biggest defense exporters to India. But when it comes to this particular deal, there does seem to be something there that meets the eye.
India is the largest importer of arms across the globe, and it's France that supplies majority of the chunk that India imports, establishing the European nation as India's biggest defense partner.
We've had a lot of cooperation with France, but they've been primarily in the area of arms hardware sales, off-the-shelf purchases. But as we've seen recently, the sale of 36 Rafael jets, which the intergovernmental agreement between India and France, it's a very unique kind of government-to-government agreement. For the first time, we are buying hardware directly from the French government and not from a private defense producer. And there is an agreement to procure 50% of the value of the contract from the Indian industry, and that makes it very different from previous, hardware purchases.
In 2016, India bought 36 Rafale jets for about 58,000 crore rupees from France. Expanding ties during the French president's visit to India, both the countries inked 14 deals and wrote a new chapter on their 20-year-old partnership.
हमारी स्ट्रेटेजिक पार्टनरशिप भले ही 20 साल पुरानी हो, हमारे देशों और हमारी सभ्यताओं की स्पिरिचुअल पार्टनरशिप सदियों लंबी है.
The purpose of this visit is also to make India our first strategic partner in the region. And I would like France to be your first strategic partner in Europe and more generally in the Western world.
Hailed as one of the landmark pacts, India and France made a common cause on maritime security. The two countries signed a strategic vision on the Indian Ocean region to counter more proactive and assertive Chinese activities in the area.
The Indian Ocean joint vision statement that the two leaders have outlined, and this to my mind is the most significant aspect of this visit because it genuinely takes this partnership onto a different level. The mutual logistics support agreement is one such agreement. We've only had one with the United States, which allows Indian and US warships to use each other's bases. Now we have one with the French, and this is very significant in the light of what's been happening in the Indian Ocean in recent years with the deployment of the Chinese warships over the last decade into the Indian Ocean. As you know, India and the United States have been working on a joint partnership, to counter the rise of the Chinese presence in the Indian Ocean region. Now, this new agreement with the French, the logistics agreement with the French, gives Indian warships access to a lot of French bases in the Indian Ocean region to counter the rise of the Chinese Navy, to counter the increased presence of the Chinese Navy, and to prevent some kind of South China Sea scenario from emerging in the Indian Ocean, which India regards as a region, its own backyard, its sphere of influence. So that, to my mind, is one of the most significant aspects of this visit, that it's actually moving this relationship between India and France from a transactional buyer-seller relationship of buying weapons to a genuine strategic partnership between two countries.
After this pact, the two countries will be able to share each other's military bases, ports and intelligence.
France is the second most powerful non-Indian Ocean region country in the Indian Ocean, apart from the United States. It maintains a flotilla of warships in the Indian Ocean, and it's got multiple bases in the Indian Ocean and Persian Gulf. They have a base in the United UAE, they have one in Djibouti, and they have one in the Western Indian Ocean region. So this actually enhances the range of Indian warships throughout the Persian Gulf and indeed the Red Sea and the Indian Ocean region, because as you noticed, in recent years, there's been there's been a thrust for India to get more bases in around the Persian Gulf. We've had a recent agreement with Oman to use one of their ports, Duqm, for Indian warships. A possible logistics supply agreement with the French makes it easier for Indian warships to use their base in the UAE and in Djibouti, where the Chinese Navy has just recently acquired its first overseas military base. So these are very, very significant agreements which enhance the range and reach of Indian naval warships throughout the region.
Modi and Macron also inaugurated the much-delayed Jaitapur nuclear power plant project. Once installed, it will be the largest nuclear power plant in the world with a capacity of 9.6 gigawatts. The French president concluded the series of pacts and deals by giving a push to India's initiative of clean energy as he launched a solar power plant in Uttar Pradesh's Mirzapur.
So I think it's a brilliant idea. Both these countries need to push it considerably. This is what actually joins India and France together in this great venture of being positive about tackling climate change, unlike President Trump, who's been completely negative and says, let's go back to coal. India is actually now part of the solution. Earlier, it was always looked as part of the problem. I think you need to compliment Prime Minister Modi for shifting that whole perception into an area where India could make the difference. India is seen as positive and as a problem solver in the entire game.
Even before Emmanuel Macron landed in India, India today landed in Paris for an exclusive interview with the President of France. Now, that interview took place in the celebrated Golden Room of the Élysée Palace, the Rashtrapati Bhavan of France.
President Macron, thank you for speaking to India today.
Thanks very much. I'm very happy to have you here and welcome in my office.
Thank you. And this is going to be your first visit to India as head of state. You've been there before as a banker. What was your impressions about India?
Look, indeed, that's my very first visit as a president, and I'm very happy to come and visit you. Following the invitation of Prime Minister Modi, when he came in Paris in June, we had a wonderful meeting, a wonderful and very friendly discussion, and he told me, come to India. So now I come. Mm-hmm. But I do remember my very first visit as a banker there, and I was very impressed, especially in Bangalore, by the energy of people.
But you had mentioned Prime Minister Modi, and there is an age gap of something like 27 years between you all, and yet you all got along very well when you all met the first time in this very office in June. What is the chemistry that you have between Mr. Modi and you?
Look, I think you can have a chemistry even if you're not part of the same generation. And my private life is probably one of the best illustrations of this kind of chemistry. I was very impressed by Prime Minister Modi's vision, and he's a very wise man with a personal philosophy and a taste for independence, I would say, on a personal basis. and is very much attached to the sovereignty of your country, as I am very attached to the sovereignty of my country. And I think that's a mix of personal background with a difference of cultures and civilization, but some common features and common key elements in terms of political philosophy: sovereignty, global issues, climate, and this strong commitment to young people.
In the Rafael deal, and this has become a subject of controversy over there, with the opposition Congress saying that the government has paid too much. When the Congress was in power, they negotiated a better deal. What is the truth behind this?
Look, I'm not the one to have negotiated, so I'm very cool about that. I have to say that the negotiation was a win-win approach, because your government made, according to me, a very good negotiation, because it preserved the industrial interests of India, and especially the fact that a large part of the production is made there, and the industrial interest of people and workers was very much defended by your Prime Minister. On the other side, I think it's a very good agreement, because it's good for your security, because that's a best-in-class aircraft, and I think it's the best way to be protected in the current environment.
Why can't the details of the deal be revealed and the whole air cleared up, rather than have these accusations go? What is preventing India and France from saying, look, this is what we bought?
I mean, first of all, because you have commercial agreements, and obviously you have competitors, and these competitors are not supposed to know some details of the deal, because it will not be good for the company itself and for commercial reasons. Every day in our lives, both in India and in France, we don't reveal some information when they have very sensitive, when they are very sensitive for business reasons.
You are the youngest ever French president. What are the advantages and disadvantages that you've seen of being so?
Look, for me, the advantage is the same as the disadvantage. I have no right to compromise. The advantage is that when you are young, you have to be brave, sometimes much more bold, sometimes perhaps tough for people, because you want to reform in depth and you have the energy to do so. But as you are young, you are supposed to spend decades with your people after your decisions and after your mandates. So you are not allowed to be short-term driven. This advantage and this disadvantage, energy, I would say, and the fact that you will share the life of your people for decades and decades, something which pushes you into the same direction. Be disruptive, transform in depth a country, and take decisions even when they are complicated on the short run, because you are here for a very long period of time with your people. And that's, I think, what my country needs. In-depth decision for the long run. And France is a very peculiar country. It's not a country to be reformed. It's not a classical country. We made several revolutions. We are very bold of what we are. But we are able to transform very rapidly and in depth ourselves if the perspective is to be one of the leaders of this world, is to promote our values, and is to be one of the country to have something to deal with universalism in a certain way, and this in-depth values. That's our DNA. So
President
that's it.
Macron, I wish you all the best, not only as President of France, but also to your visit to India. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much.